myself.
Wow, wow, that's so incredible that you're pretty much going to gay bars, but you're hearing God's voice
Hmm.
speaking to you, and then this doesn't give you any peace. So you're deciding you're gonna go to church. You go to this church, and was this on your first visit there, or after some time that this lady comes to you and starts doing a deliverance on you?
My first visit, you have to understand that I ent- I was bombarded by the demonic at an early age. When I grew up in the group homes, I used to sleep with the pillow and sheets over my head because I'd see things move up on
Mm-hmm.
the wall and just crazy stuff. And then I had never really been like deliberately in any witchcraft,
Mm-hmm.
although that spirit of alternative lifestyles, they tend to mesh. But I had never went and did like any witchcraft myself, but I was very familiar with it because I had tried it all. I did go to witches to put spells on me for success. I
Mm-hmm.
tried it all.
And
So
plus, you
for
said you were
me,
involved in like New Age and Buddhism and some other
oh
religions,
yes,
right?
yes, transcendental meditation, Reiki, everything that you can think of, I tried, and so yeah, that's
Was
what.
that was all of that? And you've mentioned that even you were involved in prostitution
Yeah,
and all of and were you also involved in drugs and that?
I tried drugs and alcohol, but because of the lifestyle that I lived, and my life many times was in jeopardy. I was held at knife point, different things. My life was in jeopardy. I tried it all. I tried cocaine,
Mm-hmm.
ecstasy. I
Mm-hmm.
tried everything that you can think of,
Mm-hmm.
acid. But I would never allow myself to be completely incoherent because if I did, I certainly would have died
Mm-hmm.
because of
Mm-hmm.
the way people took advantage of me,
Mm-hmm.
and I found myself in compromising
Mm-hmm.
situation. But I definitely tried it,
Mm-hmm.
and because there was so much alcohol and drugs in
Mm-hmm.
my family, I knew what the end of it was. Most of
Mm-hmm.
my family had died. My mom, my dad, my grandparents, my aunties all died like when in my teenage years, and
Wow.
it was cirrhosis of the liver and kidneys and things. So for me, God gave me the ability to learn from some of their mistakes. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how because I was not in the right mind or right spirit or anything of that nature, but it was by His grace. So I never went fully, I dabbled in all of it.
Mm-hmm. And speak a little bit into the torment that you experienced or you felt that honestly helped you to kind of come to or seek God. I mean, that lifestyle on the outside, I'm pretty sure you probably appeared happy and you were discovering yourself and you were living your true self, and the society, compliments that and applauds people who
Mhm.
come out from their closet and they finally,
Yeah.
live that. But what was happening on the inside? I mean, you mentioned these demonic attacks, and what was taking place inside of Kevin during that time?
Well, there was so much indescribable hurt and pain that when you go through so much trauma as I have, there's a part of you that just shuts down
Hmm.
psychologically. There's you can read up about it, but you shut down and you start to develop personalities in order to survive.
Hmm.
One of the personalities that I developed was Jada, and Jada was a total diva, but didn't care about their life in any way, shape, or form. And I felt like that's one of the things that I did. I totally lost sight of who I was. I totally lived for other people to fulfill me. I totally had this just this hatred about myself that was utter hopelessness
Hmm.
and utter darkness. And for me, there was no length that I wouldn't go to try to help myself feel better.
Hmm.
And so it's hard to even put out into words, but there's a pain and suffering that I endure that nobody should have to endure. And it caused me to cut on myself. It caused me to try to take my life. It caused a lot of pain that literally was just a breeding ground
Hmm.
for the demonic.
Hmm.
And Yeah, so
So
I'm
you
telling you.
you come to church. This lady begins to minister
Mhm.
to you. Was it a one-time deliverance? You said Legion of Demons. Was all of them out, and after that you lived happily ever after for the Lord, or
Praise God. I love this.
was this a process?
Well, it's interesting because when I first came to church, I was immersed in the things of God.
Okay.
Although the pastor didn't want to pray for me, the congregation didn't want to shake my hand, didn't want anything to do with me. But this little old lady took me under her wing. We would pray from sun up to sundown. We'd do 40-day fast and things of that nature.
Wow.
And so there wasn't, outside of that, there wasn't like a real facilitated time of deliverance, but as a byproduct of pressing into the Lord, there was deliverance and wholeness happen. But after that, I went through many deliverance programs, Living Waters, Freedom House Ministries, Sozo, all that you can think of. So it was an ongoing process. You didn't get into your bondage overnight, so the freedom that you will begin to walk in won't be overnight. There's the things that I had to come out of agreement with. There's truths that I had to receive, and there was just a lot of things that God really had to make whole
Hmm.
in me, and I am so far on the journey. But I'm still on the journey.
Hmm.
And it's
Hmm.
amazing to me because I think that some people may be under the assumption that it's a one-time thing. From my experience, it is an ongoing progressive thing. You continually being sanctified and surrendering yourself to the Lord, and He just has more of you all the
Hmm.
time. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, His goal isn't just freedom. His goal is invasion. He wants
Hmm.
every part of you.
Come
He
on.
wants to fill you to the uttermost. So yeah, it was definitely not an overnight thing. But initially,
Uh-huh.
when I first came into church, for the first um, 3 months, there was this. I didn't even. It was the first 3 months, somewhere within that time frame, it happened. But at last 6 months, maybe to a year, where I felt like I wasn't even tempted by sin. I wasn't, and I felt like it was a time that God gave me a reprieve, where it felt like that got me to a place where He could facilitate my set time for healing and deliverance, and so He wanted me to just plug into Him, begin to know more about Him, and He was facilitating my time of healing and deliverance,
Hmm.
and just answered prayer, and so much. There was so much grace, and
Hmm.
it just felt like that. It felt like I could do anything, and there wasn't a consequence really in that season. He just loved on me.
Hmm.
But later on, that's when the pruning start. After a year, it was like things that were suppressed started to come to the surface, and God was saying, now we're going to begin to deal with them.
Hmm.
So
Wow,
yeah.
wow. How
Yeah.
did you, how was your external changes were happening? Was one of the persecutions you were receiving from the church because you were not changing externally too fast, or is it just people were freaked out by just you being there, and probably they were not used to seeing anybody from that community? But
Yeah.
how was the change on the outside with you? I mean, with your voice, with your dress code, how was that happening? Did that took some time, or tell us a little bit about that?
It's still taking time. I'll just be honest with you. I'm nowhere near I used to be. You would never recognize the person. But to be honest with you, it was all of it. I describe the people that are coming out in this season from the hardest in darkness. They're like John the Baptist. They come out like looking like the wilderness. They come out looking like the animals, the creation, whatever the mess that they were in. And that was me. It was my voice, it was my mannerism. I was unchurched. And so when you're unchurched, you stick out a lot in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And so I stuck out like a sore thumb. And yeah, and frankly, because of the trauma I went through, I really didn't care too much about what you thought of me. I was gonna be me, because one of the things that God used later for his glory, but being in a transgender, gay lifestyle, all of that, you have to begin to just not care. You have to be, there's a part of you that you have to condition yourself just to not care, or make it look like you don't care about people's opinion. And I was very much an army of one for the longest. And so it really took me a long time to embrace what the true church is, the body of Christ, and that I was a part of it. So yeah, it was the voice. It was all of that. I didn't know what it looked like to be the church. And so, and what it looked like for me, not trying to be I had a long season where I tried to be the church based on whatever other people thought it should be, especially in a holiness church, and there's strong, standards. But in the midst of that, I felt like that, it was quite.
And sometimes in more of churches where holiness is overly emphasized, mainly it's overemphasized the external components of it. Not as much as about renewing of the mind and make sure that people think different, that we right away want to have them dress different, and we want them to look different, talk different, and the fact that they on the inside they're sick, on the inside they're hurting, on the inside nobody has dealt with their multiple personality, nobody has addressed the hurt, nobody has addressed the abuse, nobody has addressed the drug stuff. But make sure that you dress right, and make sure you talk right, and make sure that you have the right haircut. And so I think that's what a lot of times it hurts people coming from the outside in, who spend, let's say, their 20 years in LGBT community, and and the first thing that the church wants, the first thing is, let's make sure that we change their dress code. And I'm all for, there's everything, the sanctification is the whole package, but at the same time it starts from within. If the person has lived, like you mentioned in your case, you've lived for years in demonic torment, years in such a hurt that your personality is split. The first thing that you need is you need healing. People like that, they need restoration and stuff. You mentioned something before we went live and I've noticed this issue where a lot of transgender people get saved, and then a few years later they actually go back to that lifestyle. Were you tempted with that? Why does this happen?
Why, more than being tempted by it, it is so much fighting against you to live it. And that include, you have nowadays, the Methodist Church have an open door thing where they accept those with no problem freely that are in any type of lifestyle. And then you have the church that are walking in real truth, that they don't accept you because you don't look the part, and it takes a while for you to walk in who you are in Christ. And so for me, that was the case. I just felt like that for me, it was that, so